Good morning, Rolette English 11th grade students. Again, we're going to do this again. The Sky Stealer, page 379. The last part we read had their first air raid, and they were down in the basement, and Max had to stay at home, of course, in their basement. But he came upstairs and he peeked through the window and saw the stars, and they burned his eyes. Okay, the Sky Stealer. The first raid, as it turned out, was not a raid at all. Had people waited to see the planes, they would never have stood there all night. They would have stood there all night. They accounted for the fact that no cuckoo had called from the radio. That accounted for the fact that no cuckoo had called from the radio. The Molking Express reported that a certain flak tower operator had become a little overexcited. He'd sworn that he could hear the rattle of planes and see them on the horizon. He sent the word. He might have done it on purpose, Hans Superman pointed out. Would you want to sit on a flak tower shooting up at planes carrying bombs? Sure enough, as Max continued reading the article in the basement, it was reported that the man with the outlandish imagination had been stood down for his original duty. His fate was most likely some sort of service elsewhere. So this guy got in trouble. Good luck to him, Max said. He seemed to understand as he moved on to the crossword. The next raid was real. On the night of September 19th, the cuckoo called from the radio, and it was followed by a deep, informative voice. It listed Molking as a potential target. Again, Himmel Street was a trail of people, and again, Papa left his accordion. Rosa reminded him to take it, but he refused. I didn't take it last time, he explained, and we lived. War clearly blurred the distinction between logic and superstition. Eerie air followed them down to the Fiedler's basement. I think it's real tonight, said Mr. Fiedler, and the children quickly realized that their parents were even more afraid this time around. Reacting the only way they knew, the youngest of them began to wail and cry as the room seemed to swing. And even from the cellar, they could vaguely hear the tone of bombs. Air pressure shoved itself down like a ceiling, as if to mash the earth. A bite was taken of Molking's empty streets. Rosa held furiously onto Liesel's hand. The sound of crying children kicked and punched. Even Rudy stood completely erect, feigning in nonchalance, tensing himself against the tension. Arms and elbows fought for room. Some of the adults tried to calm the infants. Others were unsuccessful in calming themselves. Shut that kid up, Frau Holzhoffel clamored. That's the lady who spits on the door. Listen how she's talking to these kids. But her sentence was just another hapless voice in the warm chaos of the shelter. Grimy tears were loosened from children's eyes, and the smell of night breath, underarm sweat, and overworn clothes was stirred and stewed in what was now a cauldron swimming with humans. Although they were right next to each other, Liesel was forced to call out, Mama, again. Mama, you're squeezing my hand. What? My hand. Rosa released her, and for comfort, to shut out the din of the basement, Liesel opened up one of her books and began to read. The book on top of the pile was The Whistler, and she spoke it aloud to help her concentrate. The opening paragraph was numb in her ears. What did you say? Mama roared, but Liesel ignored her. She remained focused on the first page. When she turned to page 2, it was Rudy who noticed. He paid direct attention to what Liesel was reading, and he tapped his brother and his sisters, telling them to do the same. Hans Huberman came closer and called out, and soon a quietness started bleeding through the crowded basement. By page 3, everyone was silent but Liesel. So she's reading a book to everybody, just like this, people. Okay. Take a book with you if you have to go to an air raid shelter. She didn't dare to look up, but she could feel the frightened eyes hanging onto her as she hauled the words out and breathed them in. Interesting phrasing, hauled the words out and breathed them in, that she's engaging in words. The way words are spoken of in this book is just phenomenal. Okay. Let's see. A voice played the notes inside her. This, it said, is your accordion. Ah, interesting. To compare her reading with Hans playing the accordion, that the impact on others is so positive and so beneficial. That's interesting. That's really an interesting comparison. The sound of the turning page carved them in half. Liesel read on. For at least 20 minutes, she handed out the story. The youngest kids were soothed by her voice, and everyone else saw visions of the Whistler running from the crime scene. Liesel did not. The book thieves saw only the mechanics of the words, their bodies stranded on the paper, beating down for her to walk on. Somewhere, too, in the gaps between a period and the next capital letter, there was also Max. She remembered reading to him when he was sick. Is he in the basement, she wondered, or is he stealing a glimpse of the sky above? A nice thought. One was a book thief. The other stole the sky. Max is stealing the sky. Everyone waited for the ground to shake. That was still an immutable fact, but at least they were distracted now by the girl with the book. One of the younger boys contemplated crying again, but Liesel stopped at the moment and imitated her papa, or even Rudy for that matter. She winked at him and resumed. Only when the sirens leaked into the cellar again did someone interrupt her. "We're safe," said Mr. Jensen. "Shh," said Frau Holzapfel. She wants to hear the story. The lady who spits likes this. Liesel looked up. "There are only 2 paragraphs till the end of the chapter," she said, and she continued reading with no fanfare or added speed, just the words. Duden Dictionary meaning number 4, Wort, word, a meaningful unit of language, a promise, a short remark, a statement or conversation. Related words, term, name, expression. Out of respect, the adults kept everyone quiet, and Liesel finished chapter 1 of The Whistler. On their way up the stairs, the children rushed by her, but many of the older people, even Frau Holzapfel, even Pfiffikus, how appropriate considering the title she read from, thanked the girl for the distraction. They did so as they made their way past and hurried from the house to see if Himmel Street had sustained any damage. Himmel Street was untouched. The only sign of war was a cloud of dust migrating from east to west. It booked through the windows, trying to find a way inside, and as it simultaneously thickened and spread, it turned the trail of humans into apparitions. There were no people on the street anymore. They were rumors carrying bags. So it kind of makes the people, it describes them as not even really being people anymore. They're apparitions or rumors. There's movement, but it's almost beyond physical. At home, Papa told Max all about it. "There's fog and ash. I think they let us out too early." He looked to Rosa. "Should I go out to see if they need help where the bombs dropped?" Rosa was not impressed. "Don't be so idiotic," she said. "You'll choke on the dust." "No, Carol, you're staying here." A thought came to her. She looked at Hans very seriously now. In fact, her face was crayoned with pride. "Stay here and tell him about the girl." Her voice loaded just loud and just slightly. "About the book." Max gave her some added attention. The Whistler, Rosa informed him, chapter 1. She explained exactly what had happened in the shelter. As Liesel stood in the corner of the basement, Max watched her and rubbed a hand along his jaw. Personally, I think that was the moment he conceived the next body of work for his sketchbook, The Word Shaker. That's something Max is probably going to write about. He imagined the girl reading in the shelter. He must have watched her literally handing out the words. However, as always, he must have seen the shadow of Hitler. He could probably already hear his footsteps coming toward Himmel Street and the basement for later. After a lengthy pause, he looked ready to speak, but Liesel beat him to it. "Did you see the sky tonight?" "No." Max looked at the wall and pointed. On it, they all watched the words and the picture he'd painted more than a year ago, the rope and the dripping sun. Only that one tonight, and from there no more was spoken, nothing but thoughts. Max, Hans, and Rosa I cannot account for, but I know that Liesel Memminger was thinking that if the bombs ever landed on Himmel Street, not only did Max have less chance of survival than everyone else, but that he would die completely alone. Frau Holzapfel's offer, the lady who spits on the door, who liked the reading. Listen to this. In the morning, the damage was inspected. No one died, but 2 apartment blocks were reduced to pyramids of rubble, and Rudy's favorite Hitler Youth field had an enormous bowl scooped out of it. Half the town stood around its circumference. People estimated its depth to compare it with their shelters. Several boys and girls spat into it. Rudy was standing next to Liesel. "Looks like they need to fertilize again," because of course he got stuck in all that cow manure or whatever that manure was on that playing field at an earlier time. When the next few weeks were raid-free, life almost returned to normal. 2 telling moments, however, were on their way. The dual events of October, the hands of Frau Holzapfel, the parade of Jews. Oh boy, that's kind of a biggie. Her wrinkles were like slander. Her voice was akin to a beating with a stick. Wow. Her wrinkles like slander. Her voice like a beating with a stick. It was actually quite fortunate that they saw Frau Holzapfel coming from the living room window, for her knuckles on the door were hard and decisive. They meant business. Liesel heard the words she dreaded. You go and answer it, Mama said, and the girl, knowing only too well what was good for her, did as she was told. Is your Mama home? Frau Holzapfel inquired. Constructed of 50-year-old wire, she stood on the front step, looking back every so often to view the street. Is that swine of a mother of yours here today? Liesel turned and called out. Duden Dictionary meaning number 5. Gelegenheit, opportunity, a chance for advancement or progress. Related words, prospect, opening, break. Soon Rosa was behind her. What do you want here? You want to spit on my kitchen floor now, too? Frau Holzapfel was not deterred in the slightest. Is that how you greet everyone who shows up on your front door? What a Gindel. Liesel watched. She was unfortunate enough to be sandwiched between them. Rosa pulled her out of the way. Well, are you going to tell me why you're here or not? Frau Holzapfel looked one more at the street and back. I have an offer for you. Mama shifted her weight. Is that right? I mean, what? This is a surprise. No, not you, she dismissed Rosa with a shrug of the voice and focused now on Liesel. You. What do you want? What did you ask for? What did you ask? Why did you ask for me then? Well, I at least need your permission. Oh, Maria, Jesus, Liesel thought. This is all I need. What the hell can Holzapfel want from me? I liked your book you read in the shelter. I like that book you read in the shelter. No, you're not getting it. Liesel was convinced of that. Yes? I was hoping to hear the rest of it in the shelter, but it looks like we're safe for now. She rolled her shoulders and straightened the wire on her back. So I want you to come to my place and read it to me. You've got some nerve, Holzapfel. Rosa was deciding whether to be furious or not. If you think, I'll stop spitting on your door, she interrupted, and I'll give you my coffee ration. Rosa decided against being furious. And some flour? What, are you a Jew? Just the coffee. You can swap the coffee with someone else for the flour. It was decided. But by everyone but the girl. Good then, it's done. Mama? Quiet, Salmensch, go and get the book. Mama faced Frau Holzapfel again. What day suits you? Monday and Friday, 4 o'clock. And today, right now. This lady's going to stop spitting and she's going to have Liesel read to her. Liesel followed and the regimented footsteps to Frau Holzapfel's lodging next door, which was a mirror image of the Hubermans. If anything, it was slightly larger. When she sat down at the kitchen table, Frau Holzapfel sat directly in front of her, but faced the window. Read, she said. Chapter 2? No, Chapter 8. Of course, Chapter 2. Now get reading before I throw you out. What a lady! Yes, Frau Holzapfel. Never mind the yes, Frau Holzapfel. Just open the book. We don't have all day. Good God, Liesel thought. This is my punishment for all the stealing. It's finally caught up with me. She read for 45 minutes, and when the chapter was finished, a bag of coffee was deposited on the table. Thank you, the woman said. It's a good story. She turned toward the stove and started on some potatoes. Without looking back, she said, Are you still here, are you? Get out! Liesel took that as her cue to leave. Danke schön, Frau Holzapfel. By the door, when she saw the framed photo of 2 young men in military uniform, she also threw in a Heil Hitler, her arm raised to the kitchen. Yes, Frau Holzapfel was proud and afraid. I have 2 sons in Russia. Heil Hitler. 2 sons in Russia. Heil Hitler. Ooh, she has 2 of her sons. That's where all the guys got killed. She put her water down to boil and even found the corners to walk a few steps with Liesel to the front door. Bis morgen? The next day was Friday. Yes, Frau Holzapfel, until tomorrow. Liesel calculated that there were 4 more reading sessions like that with Frau Holzapfel before the Jews were marched through Molking. They were going to Dachau to concentrate. Concentration camp. Get that? Concentrate. You're supposed to concentrate when you're in a concentration camp. That makes 2 weeks, she would later write in her basement, 2 weeks to change the world and 14 days to ruin it. They're marching through Molking, which is a suburb of a small part of Munich, a large city in southern Germany, on their way to Dachau. I think I've told you, I've been to Dachau. That's the only, when I went to Munich, for another reason, I realized this is my one chance to see a concentration camp. So I took a commuter train and I got out there. It was kind of difficult getting a ticket, but I only because I didn't have German money, but I got it done. I got it, but it was quite an experience. But listen to what happens here. The long walk to Dachau. Some people said that the truck had broken down, but I can personally testify this was not the case. I was there. What had happened was an ocean sky with white-capped clouds. Also, there was more than just one vehicle. 3 trucks don't all break down at once. When the soldiers pulled over to share some food and cigarettes and to poke at the package of Jews, one of the prisoners collapsed from starvation and sickness. I have no idea where the convoy had traveled from, but it was perhaps 4 miles from Molking and many steps more to the concentration camp at Dachau. I climbed through the windshield of the truck, found the diseased man, and jumped out the back. His soul was skinny. His beard was a ball and chain. The feet landed loudly in the gravel, but not a sound was heard by a soldier or prisoner. But they could all smell me. So death has come in through the truck and taken out these Jews being transported, evidently in the back of a truck. Recollection tells me that there were many wishes in the back of that truck. Inner voices called out to me, "Why him and not me?" Or, "Thank God it isn't me. Some people wanted to just die. Why does he get to die and I don't?" The others say, "Oh, I don't want to die yet," okay? The soldiers, on the other hand, were occupied with a different discussion. The leader squashed his cigarette and asked the others a smuggy question. "When was the last time we took these rats for some fresh air?" His first lieutenant choked back a cough. They could use it. They could sure use it, couldn't they? "Well, how about it then? We got time, don't we?" "We've always got time, sir. And it's perfect weather for parade, don't you think?" "It is, sir." "So what are you waiting for?" "He's going to use these people as a parade." On Himmel Street, Liesel was playing soccer when the noise arrived. 2 boys were fighting for the ball in the midfield when everything stopped. Even Tommy Mueller could hear it. "What is that?" he asked from his position in goal. Everyone turned toward the sound of shuffling feet and regimented voices as they made their way closer. "Is that a herd of cows?" Rudy asked. "It can't be. It never sounds quite like that, does it?" Slowly at first, the street of children walked towards the magnetic sound up towards Frau Diller's. Once in a while, there was added emphasis in the shouting. In a tall apartment just across the corner on Munich Street, an old lady with a foreboding voice deciphered for everyone the exact source of the commotion. Up high in that window, her face appeared like a white flag with moist eyes and an open mouth. Her voice was like suicide, landing with a clunk at Liesel's feet. Her voice was like suicide. This is such unusual imagery. The words are coming out of her mouth like a suicide, landing with a clunk at Liesel's feet. She had gray hair. The eyes were dark blue. "Die Juden," she said. "The Jews." Duden Dictionary meaning number 6. Elend, misery, great suffering, unhappiness and distress. Related words, anguish, torment, despair, wretchedness, desolation. More people appeared on the street when a collection of Jews and other criminals had already been shoved past. Perhaps the death camps were kept secret, but at times people were shown the glory of a labor camp like Dachau. So, people are seeing what's going on, where people are heading towards Dachau. Far up because otherwise you don't see what's going on in the concentration camp. Far up on the other side, Liesel spotted the man with his paint cart. He was running his hand uncomfortably through his hair. "Up there," she pointed out to Rudy, "my papa," so she can see Hans down the street with his paint cart. They both crossed and made their way up, and Hans Huberman attempted at first to take them away. Liesel, he said, maybe. He realized, however, that the girl was determined to stay, and perhaps it was something she should see. In the breezy autumn air, he stood with her. He did not speak. On Munich Street they watched. Others moved in and around and in front of them. They watched the Jews come down the road like a catalogue of colors. That wasn't how the book thief described them, but I can tell you that that's exactly what they were. For many of them would die. They would each greet me like their last true friend, with bones like smoke and their souls trailing behind. When they arrived in full, the noise of their feet throbbed on top of the road. Their eyes were enormous in their starving skulls. And the dirt was molded to them. Their legs staggered as they were pushed by soldiers' hands. A few wayward steps of forced running before the slow return to a malnourished walk. Hans watched them above the heads of the crowding audience. I'm sure his eyes were silver and strained. Liesel looked through the gaps or over shoulders. The suffering faces of depleted men and women reached across to them, pleading not so much for help. They were beyond that, but for an explanation, just something to subdue this confusion. That makes perfect sense. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? How can such a horror unfold in the middle of people on a street, watching these Jews starved, abused, walking as a parade? How does this happen, people? Their feet could barely rise above the ground. Stars of David were plastered on their shirts, and misery was attached to them as if assigned. Don't forget your misery. In some cases, it grew on them like a vine. At their side, the soldiers also made their way past, ordering them to hurry up and stop moaning. Some of these soldiers were only boys. They had the Führer in their eyes. As she watched all of this, Liesel was certain that that these were the poorest souls alive. That's what she wrote about them. Their gaunt faces were stretched with torture. Hunger ate them as they continued forward, some of them watching the ground to avoid the people on the side of the road. Some looked appealingly at those who had come to observe their humiliation, this prelude to their deaths. Others pleaded for anyone to step forward and catch them in their arms. No one did. Whether they watched this parade with pride, temerity, or shame, nobody came forward to interrupt it. Not yet. You watched that, and some people were proud, we're getting the Jews. Others were fearful. What? Temerity or shame. How can we be doing this? Once in a while, a man or a woman, too, no, they were not men and women, they were Jews, would find Liesel's face among the crowd. They would meet her with their defeat, and the book thief could do nothing but watch them back in a long, incurable moment before they were gone again. She could only hope that they could read the depth of sorrow in her face, to recognize that it was true and not fleeting. I have one of you in my basement, she wanted to say. We built a snowman together. I gave him 13 presents when he was sick. Liesel said nothing at all. What good would it be? She understood that she was utterly worthless to these people. They could not be saved, and in a few minutes she would see what would happen to those who might try to help them. In a small gap in the procession, there was a man older than the others. He wore a beard and torn clothes. His eyes were the color of agony, and weightless as he was too heavy for his legs to carry. Several times he fell. The side of his face was flattened against the road. On each occasion a soldier stood above him. "Steh auf," he called down. "Stand up." The man rose to his knees and fought his way up. He walked on. Every time he caught up sufficiently to the back of the line, he would soon lose momentum and stumble again to the ground. There were more behind him, a good truck's worth, and they threatened to overtake and trample him. The ache in his arms was unbearable to watch as they shook, trying to lift his body. They gave way one more time before he stood and took another group of steps. He was dead. The man was dead. Just give him 5 more minutes and he would surely fall into the German gutter and die. They would all let him, and they would all watch. Then one human, Hans Huberman. It happened so quickly. The hand that held firmly onto Liesel's hand let it drop to her side as the man came struggling by. She felt her palm slap her hip. Papa reached into his paint can and pulled something out. He made his way through the people onto the road. The Jew stood before him, expecting another handful of derision, but he watched with everyone else as Hans Huberman held his hand out and presented a piece of bread, like magic. When it changed hands, the Jew slid down. He fell to his knees and held Papa's shins. He buried his face between them and thanked him. Liesel watched. With tears in her eyes, she saw the man slide farther forward, pushing Papa back to cry onto his ankles. Other Jews walked past, all of them watching this small, futile miracle. They streamed by like human water. That day, a few would reach the ocean. They would be handed a white cap, meaning this little river of people is going to drop into the ocean. They're going to die. Walking through, a soldier was soon at the scene of the crime. He studied the kneeling man and Papa, and he looked at the crowd. After another moment's thought, he took the whip from his belt and began. The Jew was whipped 6 times, on his back, his head, and his legs. "You filth, you swine!" Blood dripped down from his ear. Then it was Papa's turn. A new hand held Liesel's now, and when she looked in horror next to her, Rudy Steiner swallowed as Hans Huberman was whipped on the street. The wound sickened her, and she expected cracks to appear in her Papa's body. He was struck 4 times before he, too, hit the ground. When the elderly Jew climbed to his feet for the last time and continued on, he looked briefly back. He took a last sad glance at the man who was kneeling, now himself, whose back was burning with 4 lines of fire, whose knees were aching on the road. If nothing else, the old man would die like a human, or at least with the thought that he was a human. Me? I'm not so sure if that's such a good thing. Wow. You got to give Hans credit. He gave the man a piece of bread. Wow. I want to be a Hans Huberman. When Liesel and Rudy made it through and helped Hans to his feet, there were so many voices, words, and sunlight. That's how she remembered it. The light sparkling on the road and the words like waves breaking on her back. Only as they walked away did they notice the bread sitting rejected on the street. As Rudy attempted to pick it up, a passing Jew snatched it from his hand, and another 2 fought for him for it as they continued on their way to Dachau. Silver eyes were pelted then. A cart was turned over and paint flowed onto the street. They called him a Jew lover. Others were silent, helping him back to safety. Hans Huberman leaned forward, arms outstretched against a house wall. He was suddenly overwhelmed by what had just happened. There was an image, fast and hot. 33 Himmel Street, its basement. Thoughts of panic were caught between the in and out struggle of his breath. They'll come now. They'll come. Now his action will invite the Nazis to come and inspect the house. Oh Christ, oh crucified Christ. He looked at the girl and closed his eyes. Are you hurt, Papa? She received questions rather than an answer. What was I thinking? His eyes closed tighter and open again. His overalls creased. There was paint and blood on his hands and breadcrumbs. How different from the bread of summer. Oh my God, Liesel, what have I done? Yes, I must agree. What had Papa done? How horrible, people, that an act of mercy and care is seen as betrayal and may well become an act which will be punished. What a pathetic humanity has taken place in this place. I'm going to keep going. A few more. Here we go. Peace. Just after just after 11 p.m. that same night, Max Vandenberg walked up Himmel Street with a suitcase full of food and warm clothes. German was in his lungs. What? He walked up the Himmel Street with a suitcase full of food and warm clothes. German air was in his lungs. The yellow stars were on fire. When he made it to Frau Diller's, he looked back one last time to number 33. He could not see the figure on the kitchen window, but she could see him. She waved, and he did not wave back. Liesel could still feel his mouth on her forehead. She could smell the breath of goodbye. I have left something for you, he'd said, but you will not get it until you're ready. He left. Max? But he did not come back. He had walked from her room and silently shut the door. The hallway murmured. He was gone. When she made it to the kitchen, Mama and Papa stood with crooked bodies and preserved faces. They had been standing like that for 30 seconds of forever. Duden Dictionary meaning number 7. Schweigen, silence. The absence of sound or noise. Related words. Quiet, calmness, peace. How perfect. Peace. Somewhere near Munich, a German Jew was making his way through the darkness. An arrangement had been made to meet Hans Huberman in 4 days, that is, if he wasn't taken away. It was at a place far down the Amper where a broken bridge leaned among the river and trees. He would make it there, but he would not stay longer than a few minutes. The only thing to be found there when Papa arrived 4 days later was a note under a rock at the base of a tree. It was addressed to nobody and contained only one sentence. The last words of Max Vandenberg. You've done enough. Now more than ever, 33 Himmel Street was a place of silence, and it did not go unnoticed that the Duden Dictionary was completely and utterly mistaken, especially with its related words. Silence was not quiet or calm, and it was not peace. Oh, this breaks my heart, people. So they were going to meet and do something, I don't quite know, and then he didn't stay to meet. He just said, Hans, you've done enough. The Idiot and the Coatman. On the night of the parade, the idiot sat in the kitchen, drinking bitter gulps of Holzapfel's coffee and hankering for a cigarette. He waited for the Gestapo, the soldiers, the police, for anyone to take him away, as he felt he deserved. Rosa ordered him to come to bed. The girl loitered in the doorway. She sent them both away and spent the hours till morning with his head in his hands, waiting. Nothing came. Every unit of time carried with it the expected noise of knocking and threatening words. They did not come. The only sound was of himself. What have I done? He whispered again. Okay, this is Hans we're talking about. God, I'd love a cigarette, he answered. He was all out. Liesl heard the repeated sentences several times, and it took a lot to stay by the door. She'd have loved to comfort him, but she had never seen a man so devastated. There was no consolation that night. Max was gone, and Hans Huberman was to blame. The kitchen cupboards were the shape of guilt, and his palms were only oily with the memory of what he'd done. They must be sweaty, Liesl thought, for her own hands were soaked to the wrists. By helping people, he realized now he's placed Max at risk. But was it a bad thing? It was almost a necessary thing to do. What do you do, people? What do you do? In her room, she prayed, hands and knees, forearms against the mattress. Please, God, please let Max survive. Please, God, please. Her suffering knees, her painful feet. When first light appeared, she awoke and made her way back to the kitchen. Papa was asleep with his head parallel to the tabletop, and then there was some saliva at the corner of his mouth. The smell of coffee was overpowering, and the image of Hans Huberman's stupid kindness was still in the air. It was like a number or an address, repeated enough times, and it sticks. His first attempt to wake him was unfelt, but her second nudge of the shoulder brought him his head to the table in an upward shock. Are they here? Are they here? No, Papa, it's me. He finished the stale pool of coffee in his mug. His Adam's apple lifted and sank. They should have come by now. Why haven't they come, Liesl? It was an insult. They should have come by now and swept through the house, looking for any evidence of Jew-loving or treason. But it appeared that Max had left them no reason at all. He could have been asleep in the basement or sketching in his book. You can't have known that they wouldn't come, Papa. I should have known not to give the man some bread. I just didn't think. Papa, you did nothing wrong. I don't believe you. He stood and walked out the kitchen door, leaving it ajar, lending even more insult to injury. It was going to be a lovely morning. When 4 days had elapsed, Papa walked a long length to the Amper River. He had brought back a small note and placed it on the kitchen table. Isn't it? It's weird to see Hans, who's always so calm and so able to care, to see him broken, and for such a sad reason. He showed mercy. He did a good thing, and now he's suffering for it. Another week passed. Just a second, yep, I'm going to finish this chapter. Another week passed, and still Hans Huberman waited for his punishment. The welts on his back were turning to scars, and he spent the majority of his time walking around Molking. Frau Diller spat at his feet. Frau Holzapfel, true to her word, had ceased spitting at the Hubermans' door, but there was a handy replacement. I knew it, the shopkeeper damned him. You dirty Jew lover. He walked obliviously on, and Liesel would often catch him at the Amper River on the bridge. His arms rested on the rail, and he leaned his upper body over the edge. Kids on bikes rushed past him, or they ran with loud voices and the slaps of his feet on wood. None of it moved him in the slightest. Duden Dictionary, meaning number 8, Nachtrauern, regret. Sorrow filled with longing, disappointment, or loss. Related words: rue, repent, mourn, grieve. Did you see him? He asked one afternoon when she leaned with him. Is in the water there? The river was not running very fast. In the slow ripples, Lisa could see the outline of Max Vandenberg's face. She could see his feathery hair and the rest of him. He used to fight with the Fuhrer in our basement. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Papa's hands tightened on the splintery wood. I'm an idiot. No, Papa, you're just a man. That's what she's thinking. Those aren't in quotation marks. The words came to her more than a year later when she wrote in the basement. She wished she'd thought of them at the time. I am stupid, Hans Huberman told his foster daughter, and kind, which makes me the biggest idiot in the world. The thing is, I want them to come for me. Anything's better than this waiting. Hans Huberman needed vindication. He needed to know that Max Vandenberg had left his house for good reason. Finally, after 3 weeks of waiting, he thought his moment had come. It was late. Liesel was returning from Frau Holzapfel's when she saw the two men in their long black coats, and she ran inside. Papa, Papa! She nearly wiped out the kitchen table. Papa, they're here! Mama came first. What's all this shouting about, Salmensch? Well, who's here? The Gestapo. Hansi! He was already there, and he walked out of the house to greet them. Liesel wanted to join him, but Rosa held her back, and they watched from the window. Papa was poised at the front gate. He fidgeted. Mama tightened her grip on Liesel's arm. The men walked past. Papa looked back at the window, alarmed, and then made his way out to the gate. He called after them, Hey, I'm right here. It's me you want. I live in this one. The men only stopped him momentarily and checked their notebooks. No, they told him. Their voices were deep and bulky. Unfortunately, you're a little old for our purposes. They continued walking, but they did not travel very far, stopping at number 35 and proceeding through the open gate. Frau Steiner, they asked when the door was opened. Yes, that's right. We've come to talk to you about something. The coatmen stood like jacketed columns on the threshold of Steiner's shoebox house. For some reason, they'd come for the boy. The coatmen wanted Rudy. I'm going to stop there, people. Thanks so much, you guys. You take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.